Didier REYNDERS, you are the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Belgium. Welcome to WPC Television. Tell me how you see the position of the situation of the European Union now. I ask the question because there will soon be elections to the European Parliament, and I think in most countries, I think particularly of Britain, of France, of the Netherlands, there are going to be strong anti-EU parties. Now, Belgium famously is very, very favorable to the European Union. How do you see things evolving?
As a founder country, we are in fact in favor of the European process, but we have the same kind of evolution in Belgium also, some skepticism about the European process. And I'm afraid about maybe the possibility to have 1/3 of the European Parliament, not only with Eurosceptics, but maybe also populists and some difficult parties to work on the European process. So 1/3 is quite huge, and we will try to organize a process to organize another kind of debate. First of all, if it's possible to go to a recovery in Europe, and it seems to be the case in the northern part of Europe. If you look to Germany, the figures in Belgium, in the Benelux, is still better. So it will be maybe easier to convince about the European process if we have a recovery on the economic side. And the second element, I'm sure that we need to have a politicization of the European debate, to don't have such a debate just among the people who are in favor of the European process and the Eurosceptics. And it's maybe better to have a discussion about what kind of policy for employment, what kind of economic policy, of social policy, with some party having a socialist project, or a liberal one, or Christian Democrat, or Green. And so I'm sure that it's quite important now to have a real political debate at the European level, and not just to stay with people in favor and people against the European process.
Well, when it comes to the mechanics of the European Union, people often talk about the democratic deficit, and the idea of Parliament being a way of closing that deficit. But the counter-argument actually is that nobody knows who their MEP is.
Of course.
And really you could solve the democratic deficit better by going back to the days when it was much more intergovernmental and you had delegations from governments going to the Parliament.
But we are still in many issues in an intergovernmental process. If you look to the euro, we are working with 17 members. In January it will be 18, just to manage the currency. And the last months, it was needed to organize new treaties among a lot of partners, without UK, without the Czech Republic sometimes. And so we have an intergovernmental process. So to go further, we need to have a more federal approach. But that means maybe some new steps with a lot of member states, but not all. Like for Schengen, like for the euro, like maybe later for the social model, it will be possible to do something with a group of member states. But to have a better relation with the population, we need to organize another process. To give an example, in Belgium, it will be very difficult to discuss about the European Parliament, not about Europe, because we will have many discussions about Europe, but about the European Parliament due to what? At the same moment of the 25th of May, we will have federal elections in Belgium, regional elections, and the European one. And so I'm sure that we need to find a way to have another kind of interest for the European Parliament. And one idea is to ask to all the political parties in Europe to have one candidate for the presidency of the Commission. We try to organize that for the moment with the Socialists, the Christian Democrats, the Greens, the Liberals, to put forward one candidate. So to have such a discussion, is it possible to vote not only for your own MP, but maybe through the MP for the President of the European Commission? Like in many countries, when you vote for your national MP, you vote also for the Prime Minister, for the majority in the national parliament. And that's maybe the next step at the European level. We need to find a way to have a real majority and a real opposition in the next European Parliament. I'm sure that one day we will have a European Commission, a real executive body supporting by a real majority in the Parliament, like in many countries, because we have only one direct election of the President in Europe, is in France. But if you look in all other member states, we are working with a majority in the Parliament supporting the government. And without that in Europe, it's very strange for the citizens, because you don't see really what kind of majority you have, what kind of policy you have, at the European level. It's very complex, and I'm sure that maybe next year, but maybe also in the next election 5 years later, we need to go more and more to a real majority in the parliament, a real opposition, and so a real political debate. That's the only one way.
Let me ask you one final question. The euro. And there is a certain irony, it seems to me, that the euro was meant to consolidate the, if you like, integration of the European Union. And yet, perversely, it seems to be threatening the European Union, its integrity, because of the economic divergences between various member states of the Eurozone, and also because of the euro crisis itself. What is going to happen?
I was in charge during 12 years for the Department of Finance in Belgium, so I've seen all the crises coming in 2008 with the banks, and then the sovereign debt crisis. First of all, I want to say the euro is a very strong currency. We don't have a real crisis with the euro. We have a crisis with some sovereign debts in different member states, and maybe a crisis of competitiveness in the south of Europe. The second element, we need to make new steps, and it's first of all the case with the banking union. Without that, it's impossible to resist against a real crisis, but it's not enough. We need, in fact, to have the same federal approach for the budgetary policy than we have for the monetary one. If you look to the monetary policy, we have one currency for a lot of member states, one central bank, but we have 17 governments, and in some days 18 governments with each a budgetary policy. So the next step is to go further with a real integration on budgetary side like we have on monetary side. And so it's just possible maybe with the member of the Eurozone and some others who want to be members, but not with all.
It will be politically and socially very controversial.
It will be very difficult, but we need to start with the banking union, and it's the case for the moment. We have a supervision, and we will have a resolution crisis fund in the near future. Later, it's important to make new steps in the budgetary policy, but that means, in fact, in tax issues, in social issues. Just to give a last example, we have for the moment in Germany a huge debate about a minimum wage in Germany. Of course, we need, at least in the Eurozone, to have such a minimum wage to avoid the social dumping inside the European Union, and maybe, first of all, in the Eurozone. It will be difficult.
But if you have a Eurozone minimum wage, how will a country such as Greece, which has a real problem of competitiveness, remain within the Eurozone?
Yes, but it will be a minimum. I don't speak, in Belgium it's more than maybe 10 euro by hour. If you look to the discussion in Germany, they are discussing about 8-9 euros by hour.
Oh, I see. You mean that the minimum wage will not
minimum will be maybe 5 or 6, I don't know.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a lower level,
yeah.
But to increase slowly. But we don't have people at work with 3 or 4 euros, and others are 12 or 13 in some countries as a minimum. So we need to have a real discussion on the minimum wage, like in other issues on social side and also on tax side. But I'm sure that it will be possible to do that with all the member states of the Eurozone, maybe with some others who want to be members of the Eurozone, but maybe not with all. I'm not sure that it will be possible to have a real social policy with UK or with Sweden in the near future. But we will start, and then we will see.
It's going to be a very, very interesting process. Didier REYNDERS, thank you so much for being on WPC TV.
See you.
Thank you.